There we are. We are live, boys.
How's it
That was
going?
the intense intro that I was referencing earlier. Um, Welcome everybody. With my friends from Tinuiti today. Super pumped up to speak with both Josh and Andrew about a variety of things. I think today we should focus a lot on multi-channel strategies and attributions and how it relates to iOS 14 and attribution, things like that. So I think what we'll do, I think people are probably trickling in now, is I'm going to pass it over to you, Andrew, to introduce yourself and a little bit about Tinuiti, and then we'll go up to Josh.
Excellent. Well, massively appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today, Chris. And that intro was intense. That said, I feel like it is a new era, especially when we're talking about D2C e-commerce and the exponential growth that we've seen over 2020 that seems to be pacing into 2021. And I really feel like we are in the era of the roaring 20s as of right now. So excited to see what's on the horizon. My name is Andrew Christison. I'm Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Tinuiti. A little bit about Tinuiti before I hand it over to Josh here for his introduction. Tinuiti is the largest performance marketing agency in North America. We manage over $2.2 billion in spend across Facebook, Google, Amazon. We have 14 defined service lines, and we work with a lot of the fastest growing and largest global brands in the world. With a particular niche, about 70% of our client base in e-commerce, in direct-to-consumer, in retail. So excited to see what else we have here. Chris said be informal, but I can't help myself. So Josh, feel free to introduce yourself, and excited to get the conversation started.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Andrew, and appreciate the opportunity to be here, Chris and Clearco. My name is Josh Brisco. I'm the VP of our Growth Media Division here at Tinuiti, and my division is primarily a multi-channel paid media division. We also do email as well, and we focus primarily on growth-oriented and accelerating brands. So definitely this topic here today, iOS 14, channel diversification is something that's top of mind for all of our advertisers and something we're having constant conversations about.
Beautiful. Well, happy to have both of you guys. I love the informal style. I got my t-shirt on. I know you got your Tinuiti swag over there, Andrew. Nice. I should have worn my Clearco stuff. Great. Well, listen, I'm going to start with you, Josh. Growth is really your world, your expertise. Wanted to ask you, first of all, let's just maybe outline iOS 14 is such a buzzword term, whatever you want to call it. What is it? What changed? And how does it affect direct-to-consumer e-commerce merchants as they advertise today?
In a nutshell, number one, great question. It is super hot topic right now. In a nutshell, Apple has been hinting about and eventually released a new set of privacy conditions, more or less limiting the ability of advertisers to not only track but also um, addressably identify audiences across basically any app that is coming out of the Apple Store. So what that means for advertisers is that traditionally um, users always had the ability to opt out of tracking at the individual device level. But you had to click in your settings to do that. And now the big change, which is coming out and is still gradually trickling out. So iOS 14 it's a process. It wasn't like a defined date where it was a cutoff and everything went to hell. It's still rolling out slowly. Apple still hasn't even began completely enforcing it yet. But the big change is that Apple is now proactively is enforcing that, or will be enforcing that a pop-up will show up and actually prompt people to opt into the tracking, which we as performance marketers all know and love. And the thought by our side is obviously a lot of people are not going to want to opt in, which again will materially impact our ability to measure and attribute our ad dollars, and also our ability to reach particular audiences across the apps that we really love, and Facebook being one in particular, because and that's why you hear Facebook being so vocally against this. Their cross-platform, their cross-device tracking and measurement and attribution has been so strong, uniquely so, in the past, that they really do stand. That's going to be one of the tougher channels to maintain kind of dominance on once iOS 14 really gets rolled out.
Right.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
Yeah, and I'll underscore that. So one of the big concerns is that over time, this is going to really affect retargeting. So when we're talking about paid media, I think the biggest thing that is the most concerning is that folks aren't going to be able to retarget like they used to, and really that has been a huge growth mechanism. If you think about folks coming to the site and then browsing certain items, or maybe just coming on the site for 2 seconds and then leaving, you now know that that person has interest, and you've been able to target them historically to date pretty thoroughly right now. So with that loss forecasted or anticipated over time, it removes a lot of the information that we used to know. So we're going to lose a large data set because of this. And really where I think that moves things more so towards is the dominance of first party data. And I think we're really going to see channels like email, channels like SMS, channels with owned data really becoming the powerhouses that they deserve to be. So folks that have been doing the best practices in those regards for the past 3 years, for the past 5 years, for the past decade or two, they're going to be able to dominate in this space. Folks that are just starting off, they need to refocus their efforts on ensuring that they have a strong first party strategy from the get-go, because inevitably we know that it's going to decrease that iOS 14 and future versions of this are going to further damage the ability of third-party data.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the first-party data conversation too, because it really does go hand in hand with this iOS 14 apocalypse, as many might call it. But yeah, to your point, Andrew, if the best time that there's a saying, the best time, I guess, to plant a tree was 35 years ago, but the second best time is today. So from a first-party data perspective, like if you haven't already have your infrastructure in place, if you aren't already collecting as much first-party data as you possibly can and activating against it, the second best time to do it is today. So highly advise everybody to take a hard look at your first-party data strategy, not only from like the own channels, as you mentioned, Andrew, but also the ability to use and leverage these data sets across your paid channels as well, because you can import these audience lists into Google, into Facebook, into a variety of other channels that we're buying media on, not only directly and targeting those directly, but also in the ability to seed lookalikes and similar audiences too. So first party data, as the cookie and various other ad identifiers are slowly just losing efficacy. The ability to not only gather, but to activate your first party data is going to be increasingly important across every digital touch point.
So I'm super pumped to have you guys on here, because not a lot of people always get access to Tinuiti. You are, as you had said, the largest performance marketing agency in the world. So it's nice to ask, like, when I'm hearing all of these things that you're saying, Josh, it's because of your background. It can get kind of convoluted. So what a first party data strategy look like? Where would you start? What does that mean?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you have to start at number one, just acquiring the data. So you have to have the infrastructure in place to get the first party data. And I know Andrew comes from the email world and did a lot of years selling email, and you obviously can't run an email campaign without emails. So the very bread and butter, bare bones way is just making sure you have a multitude of ways to collect emails on site, not just when somebody goes to cart, not just through some type of paid email acquisition, something like that. But you want to make sure that when people go to your website, you're able to collect that email address. You want to get their phone number. So that's first and foremost. If you go deeper into first party data that you can gather, I think a lot of people undervalue things like reviews, things like user generated content, UGC. These are all different pieces of first party data that can be leveraged, in a myriad of ways across everywhere that you're marketing and you're advertising. And the first step there, like I mentioned, is the acquisition of the data. The second part, which I think is the more challenging part for a lot of brands and retailers, is combining making that data usable. So it might be that you're getting these emails into your ESP, but that's not talking to your CRM, and that's separated from your cart. And so being able to link all those pieces of data together, then segment them in usable ways. And then the last part, and obviously the most important part, and that's kind of where my side of the house comes in on the paid media side, is actually activating that first party data So inputting that into the various ad channels that you're advertising on, and then again, either targeting those users directly, segmenting them, or using these user lists as lookalikes or similar audience seeds. Did I miss anything, Andrew?
No. I'm glad this is recorded because I need to listen to that later today. No, I think at the core you have it spot on. I think when we're thinking of first party data, what we're thinking of is data that people are giving you. So it's not limited to email, it's not limited to SMS. UGC reviews are critical, and really having like the whole ecosystem working in your favor. And when you have customers that are willing to share those things with you, you know that you're doing things right as a brand, and then you just have to know how to then leverage that in order to be successful. So when we're talking about growing first-party data from a CRM and email perspective, including SMS, push, and app, if relevant, then what we're also talking about is what else do we know about that consumer? What is their behavior in email? What are we sending them surveys where we're gaining more information, where we're gaining like male, female, and then about particular product lines or deeper surveys or knowledge or information that we have, and then can we leverage that information even within the channels that they exist within? So if we can say that that this subscriber fits the demographics, fits the purchase behavior, and fits the mold of interest across the board, then that just empowers the media team in order to be able to capture more folks like that, and to continue to grow the flywheel of the business. One of the additional things, and this is something that I like to talk about constantly, but is when I think of starting from scratch as a business, you need like traffic, you need conversion on site, and then you need retention. So historically, we've said traffic is what matters most. And then folks come into the site and they convert. And once you know that your traffic can scale, then you can continue scaling. So if we remove retargeting, though, then that cost of traffic may go up. So rather than waiting 6 months or a year or however long in order to scale your spend effectively, it may make sense to start off with that email infrastructure that is top of the line right off the bat, so that we can begin making efficiencies in that process, begin actually growing those relationships in a meaningful way that develops customer lifetime value. And it really is, I think this privacy change, what a lot of people don't get is it's a complete movement that's shifting the entire industry, because every brand needs to come up with a strategy in order to be effective in it. And if you're not doing it and you're going with the tide, then there's going to be a series of rude awakenings that are probably happening month after month, at least for the next couple of years that we know of. And one last thing I'll state is in January, and what really got me feeling like, oh my goodness, this is as serious as it is. In January, Tim Cook stated that he felt that the most important issue of the century was privacy. And so when you have the head of Apple, the wealthiest company in the world from time to time, stating that, then you know that there's going to be a significant impact, and that this is something that they're thinking about forever. And then he went on to say in his next sentence, right up there with climate change. So if he's saying that this is the most critical issue along with climate change, then to me, what that says is buckle up, and we need to start advising all of our clients on it. We need to make sure that we are as knowledgeable as we possibly can be, and we need to come up with the strategy so that we're not caught off guard.
And how come it's always Facebook that you're hearing about this about the iOS 14 affecting? Is it none of the other platforms that are out there?
So Josh may have a better answer for this, but I'll give my opinion. My opinion on the matter is that Facebook and Instagram dominate. They dominate the market in North America. They dominate the market globally in a lot of ways also. Not necessarily each individual market, but aggregately, they are where most ad spend is going. They do have the most advanced capabilities in regards to targeting. And thus, Facebook is the most impacted. So Facebook, we need to know where Facebook stands on this. We need Facebook's opinion on this. We need Facebook to assist in navigating how to still be successful on their platform, as this is the case. At the end of the day, I believe Facebook will retain its success over the long term, because when it comes down to it, there's enough companies that want to spend enough money that are going to keep Facebook afloat. Who needs to be concerned are the founders of smaller organizations. They're the ones that don't have the runway. They don't have significant funding. They may not be able to afford swings or unpredictability in cost of acquisition. And so that's where it's coming to, like, prioritizing your business objectives. And although Facebook and Instagram are the pillar and still the vast majority by far, as we talked about previously, I think we're entering the era of decentralization, right? So you not only have Facebook and Instagram, but now you have Snapchat, now you have Pinterest, now you have TikTok, and you have social media networks that are emerging and expanding, and all of them have a position in this, by all means. But Facebook has the highest gravity position because they are where the most revenue is going, and they also may have the most liberal capabilities in regards to providing data to brands to strategically grow.
Yeah, what I'd unpack there a little bit too, the point you made about Facebook having them standing a lot to lose, or potentially the most to lose, I definitely echo that. And I'll reiterate the point that I made earlier, that one thing that's been one of the reasons it's allowed Facebook to scale, and then why it's been such a core pillar of almost every kind of media plan for every brand, whether that be retail, D2C, B2B, et cetera, is that they've had just realistically the best attribution, um, particularly cross-device attribution of really any channel out there out of the box, because everybody's logged into Facebook on every one of their devices. So Facebook knows that you saw an ad on your phone, but then you made the purchase on your computer, and we can actually track that. And in our world, in the performance world, measurement is the key to being able to not only evaluate your ad dollars, but also be able to scale those ad dollars. So if I'm looking in Facebook and I see that I'm getting a 5-to-1 on my ad dollars, I have room to scale. And so I'm going to keep pouring money into that channel. And it was a really great kind of flywheel of the measurement was strong. Let's put more money into it. We saw more revenue growing in or coming in, and it really allowed us to scale really nicely across a lot of our client bases. And so Facebook is spot on, and kind of their assessment and your assessment, Andrew, that it potentially is going to be damaging not only to their bottom line, which it will be, but also that of all these small and mid-sized retailers that are dependent on this level of attribution, and dependent on the ability to track their ad dollars to the level that we've been used to on Facebook. But one thing I just want to throw out there, we're having this conversation with a lot of our clients, and the one thing I want everybody to remember is that just because of these changes, it's a change in measurement. It's not a change in ad performance. So as we start to see iOS 14 begin to be more adopted and more enforced, and we start to see cost per action and ROAS start to decrease within Facebook, it's because the measurement is changing. It's not because the actual ads are performing worse. And so there's just going to be a resetting period of understanding, hey, I'm spending the same, my media is probably performing the same. Realistically, at the end of the day, it's probably bringing the same amount of revenue to me. I just don't have the same signals that I used to, and that same great measurement and attribution that I used to. And so it's really kind of a keep calm and carry on conversation at this point, while we're still waiting for things to acclimate and really let the dust settle on all of this. And so if from that long-winded response, if there's one thing you take away, it's that if you start to seeing declining performance on Facebook and you're thinking it's attributed to iOS 14, it's that your media is not performing worse. It's just the measurement is performing worse.
And a lot of people see that, those initial metrics, right? And it goes into panic mode and not exactly looking at the root of the problem. Listen, I think I see a question here. So the question is, curious to know what other channels direct consumer brands could be exploring to make up for this impact of iOS 14. Like, what channels are they? Do you use influencers more? Like, what does that look like, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a super top of mind question for basically everybody at this point. And it's almost good timing, to Andrew's earlier point, that there really is kind of a smorgasbord of different channels that are available as performance channels now, whereas a couple of years ago, there was the offerings were a lot more limited. So before I say like, hey, go use this channel, go use that channel, brands really need to kind of understand who their core audience is and where they spend time before deciding where to allocate their money. But before diving into that, just some of the channels that we're on a broad spectrum we'll call out, and channels that have developed their own D2C capabilities, their own direct response capabilities, Snap, Pinterest, TikTok, LinkedIn, obviously, shout out here, Twitter to a certain degree, but really those first few that I mentioned are kind of the new kind of cohort of channels that we're really saying that we should explore as people start to diversify across or away from Facebook. And I think it'll be a really interesting thing because, like I mentioned, the measurement kind of stranglehold that Facebook has had on the industry for so long, as that kind of releases and gets less, you're going to see all of these platforms really perform the same from a measurement perspective. And so you'll really be able to see, even within platform data and probably within kind of more, I guess, last click sources of truth like Google Analytics, et cetera, you'll really be able to see more easily which channels are really contributing and driving revenue. So in that sense, I don't want to say I'm excited about this because this is a pretty monumental change, but in that sense, I'm optimistic that we will be able to just more easily leverage these channels and to that sense, multi-touch attribution and evaluation of your media dollars across these various channels is going to be a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that when we're talking particularly about what is the customer journey, I think folks like to think that the customer journey is relatively straightforward and or within one platform wholly and completely, but that's not the case. And that's why having the widest purview across media channels is going to be the most beneficial to the brand as possible. Because somebody might see something on TikTok, and then from TikTok, they're going to Google it, and they're going to get to the site, and then they're going to get retargeted, and they're going to go to Facebook, and then it's going to follow them on Facebook and Instagram for a while, and then they'll Google it again, and they'll go to a YouTube video, and they'll get retargeted on there, and then eventually, when the timing is right, they'll make that conversion. In addition to that, I think the rise of influencers is really critical. You have more people that are really sitting at home watching YouTube channels and following these mega or even smaller micro influencers on Instagram and other channels, and having the influence of those individuals. I mean, we've seen a huge wave in D2C of mega stars, mega influencers, literally creating brands from scratch and becoming eminently successful. I think that we don't want to discount a strategy around finding folks that align with your brand's values, align with your brand's purpose, align with natural interest in your product and product categories for you to add fuel to the fire of your ecosystem. And then in addition to that, when we're talking about people sitting at home and looking at YouTube, like myself, we're also watching Hulu. People are watching things on their Roku devices. And OTT, I personally believe, is really having a moment. And the moment is now. OTT is in CTV, connected TV, and over the top has never been as accessible as it is right now. And it has never been as highly targeted, whereas you can actually utilize first-party data in order to target your audience when they're watching their Roku on their television in their living room, and then you can actually track back the performance of that. So with a lot of these advanced developments in OTT and folks looking at multiple screens simultaneously and multiple sites simultaneously, there really is a ton of opportunity to continue to expand the community, expand the communication, and really develop relationships with customers like there hasn't ever existed before. So when we talk about right now as unprecedented times, there are privacy is a shortfall, but I think as a consumer and as somebody in marketing, I feel that privacy changes were necessary. Maybe they've been necessary since 2011, maybe before that. But I think also they're hugely beneficial. And really what's being impacted is the effect of be a good person, utilize your data responsibly, actually maintain your database of clients, communicate with them on a regular basis, and do what is going to be best on each individual channel. And the last thing I'll say is in regards to decentralization is thinking even about payment methods. I mean, we have Shop Pay really crushing it these days, right? Shop Pay is making a huge difference in people's lives. You used to have MasterCard, MasterCard, Visa, and then PayPal came along. But today you're seeing sites with Affirm, you're seeing sites with Klarna. Klarna, if you utilize Klarna, it might not only help your velocity, but you'll be able to go onto their app, or consumers will be able to go onto their app to shop for other items from them. Sezzle and all the different payment methods that have come out that folks recognize and folks are gaining familiarity with, that is really just an additional opportunity to speed up the sales velocity, and also to build a relationship with folks in a way that's familiar and credible.
Ooh, that was a lot there.
That was a lot. And then
like
I do see
class right there. I'm going to take some of your notes now and write that down. Appreciate it. We'll do a little trade here.
Yeah, exactly. And I did see a comment like with the ads on HBO Max, or I think Amazon Prime even has them now, where it's just like whatever shoes are being worn in the scene that you're watching, those little advertisements that come up on the left-hand side saying like, hey, get these Air Jordans, you can get them here. It's just wild. I first noticed that on Amazon Prime when it was just saying, it would basically give you who the cast was and their discography of like the movies that they've been in. I was like, that's incredible. Then 2 months later, there's products that I'm watching. I'm like, there's a whole new way to finance movies. Anyways, I just went on a bit of a tangent there. But as we said, we're keeping it informal. We got 3 minutes left here. I see a question. I definitely want to get it answered. It has to do with Google Chrome removing cookies. Apparently that's going to happen soon. So do you think that it's going to significantly decrease the chance to retargeting abilities across Facebook and Google? That's from Amber. I'll go over to maybe for Josh for this one, and then we can go to Andrew after. Okay.
Yeah, this like 12-year span is a doozy for privacy and just upending the way that we've again been able to target and track audiences. And so the first salvo, so to speak, was the iOS 14 update, but that only impacts obviously Apple users. Whereas the deprecation of third-party cookies on Chrome, it has much wider and widespread implications, and it's really gonna be a lot of the same as we're seeing, or we expect to see from the iOS 14 side of things, but now just across the broader web. And I don't have a stat on like what the percent usage is for Chrome versus other browsers, but it's big, and yes, we definitely expect to see retargeting in its traditional form, in its traditional sense, lose efficacy, as well as the ability to target people and to track people. There's the nice thing about how Google generally rolls out a monumental change like this is that they give us plenty of heads up and notice about it. They involve developers. So the clock is ticking for sure, but I'm much more optimistic that there will be some relatively solid alternatives to third-party cookies by then, which still will allow us to retain our ability to target and to track and to measure. But yeah, as things stand now, there aren't really a ton of good alternate solutions. There are things like there are other identifier solutions that are being worked on, but it's another big shakeup that's coming for sure.
Yeah, and I'll also say in regards to the Android mirroring the policy for iOS 14, that from our understanding, at least presently, based off of what they've explicitly said, that portion is likely not going to be until Q2 of next year. So there's a lot of information that's going to be learned along the way. I think Google is making the intelligent decision to sit on the sidelines and watch what happens with Apple and how it's being managed and what rises out of the ecosystem for measurement partners, and then implementing it once people have things under control a little bit more. But we're keeping a super close eye on that in all regards. We actually have a domain, which I think we can share in the comments, but where we are producing information on kind of this new era of privacy. And we have lots of articles and blogs and do a lot of presentations on it. So very worthwhile reviewing and or at least saving the link and checking in every month or so, because we're really trying to stay on all facets of the bleeding edge on this.
There's so much information that's going on out there. It can be tough to keep up with it, but yeah, It's exceedingly important, and these are absolutely critical changes in our industry.
And that's why, honestly, personally, I'm just so thankful and appreciative you guys took the time out of your day. And I know you're also trying to learn this as it comes in and see sort of strategically what this means for your clients. For you to spend 30 minutes with us and our viewers at ClearCo, it's super appreciated. So, Andrew, you are the Tinuiti hype man. I'm going to pass it over to you for a 30-second closeout.
Excellent. Well, massively appreciate the opportunity to speak with folks on behalf of ClearCo, on behalf of Tinuiti. And we are, thrilled for the ability to assist any brands out there that are looking to make huge impacts in their business, whether that's across growth channels, whether that's across retention channels, or whether it's across breakthrough channels. So you could feel free to reach out to either of us on LinkedIn or otherwise. We know that we'll get through this privacy struggle. So if you feel like you haven't wrapped your head around it, don't worry. The smartest minds in the world that are obsessed about this 24/7 haven't fully either. But we will get through this. And I think that we're going to get through this on top, for sure. So thank you so much for your time and Godspeed.
All righty. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Andrew.